Welcome to the Foundation's Conversations at Home program. I'm Richard E. Grant, and the Foundation has set up a COVID relief fund in order to support thousands of union performers who are going through tough times. Since March, thanks to your donations, the Foundation has given nearly $7 million in emergency aid to more than 7,000 performers and their families. If you are a SAG-AFTRA member and you need help, please just ask. And if you can help, please give. Information can be found in the description of this video. Thank you for your support. Now, it's my enormous pleasure to moderate a conversation with actor, director, however you politically correctly say it, Marielle Heller, who I call Mari, concerning her role particularly as Alma Wheatley in the critically acclaimed Netflix limited series, The Queen's Gambit. Welcome, Mari.
Oh, Richard, this is so fun. I feel like I want to interview you, though. I mean, it feels a little weird.
Oh no! Let's do back and forth. Okay, who knew that last year that a series about a fictional young female chess player in another era would become this global phenomenon? Please explain.
Truthfully, I never expected this show was going to be such an enormous hit. I mean, Anya and Scott Frank, who really created and wrote and directed the series, and I have all talked about the fact that while we were making it, we thought it was going to be this little show for people who like chess or for people who like period pieces or something, and absolutely did not expect that this show was going to be watched by so many people. I also remembered I had this moment where I saw an early cut from Scott maybe last April when the pandemic had just begun. And I said, when is the show going to come out? And he said, October. And I said, oh, it's too bad it's not going to come out during quarantine. Not, of course, realizing in October we would just be so in the thick of it and we would need a new show like this that's so delicious and fun to watch and makes you just like want more. And it kind of came out at the perfect moment. Right?
I can remember when I was speaking to you, I said, what are you doing? You said you were going to be acting in something. And I said, oh, so you've gone back. And you said, no, you've been offered this job and you're going to Berlin. And I thought, yada, yada, yada. So, who knew? Because I know you as, the amazingly breakthrough director from Diary of a Teenage Girl, then Can You Ever Forgive Me, where I worked with you and Melissa McCarthy, and then A Beautiful Day. And, in those three movies alone, you got me and Melissa and Tom Hanks Oscar nominations in the acting department, which is, real testament to your unbelievable protein talent. So what I want to know is, how did you change over from being an actor into a director?
Well, firstly, I want to say, truthfully, all the actors who I love, like you, who I worked with, you were some of the people I was the most nervous about watching me act, because I've been in such a different role for you. Like you said, I'm the director, and I felt like I was putting myself in a really vulnerable position for like, oh, are all these actors who I love and respect, are they going to want to work with me again? What if I really do a terrible job? They're going to lose all of their respect for me. But so I was an actor. I was a theater actor. I came out of college thinking I was going to work in regional theater and do Shakespeare and new plays off Broadway for the rest of my life. And I really liked the idea of that in theory. And I came out of theater school kind of full of piss and vinegar, thinking like I was going to have this rockin' theater career, and then found myself not having good parts. In college, you play like Lady Macbeth, and then you get out and you're playing some part with one line, or you have nothing meaty to dig your teeth into. Or I was going out for commercials where I was like, being asked to wear a bikini and bounce a beach ball and have no lines. And I just thought, I'm not creatively fulfilled. Like I had always felt like acting was this muscular, juicy thing that you get to do that really works on all of your creative talents and pulls from everything, and takes your whole brain power to do it. But the work I was doing wasn't necessarily doing that. Every once in a while, I'd have something that was great that was doing that, but 95% of the time I wasn't. So I was unsatisfied, and I started writing really from that need, from that place of feeling creatively hijacked. And Diary came out of that. You know, I read this book and I was so blown away by it. And I was like, why don't we have characters like this? I'm going to write it. And it really, you know, I never said I'm going to stop acting or I'm giving this up. It was really sort of just following creative juices and like following the green lights. Things started happening. As soon as I started writing and then directing, I was finding doors opening, and it felt like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to head down this path. And it wasn't until, honestly, about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, Yorma and I went to see a Broadway play. And I won't say what it was, but there was a performance in it. There was a character in the play that I would just be perfect for.
Yeah.
And I got sad. You know, I watched this play and I got sad again. And I haven't missed acting at all. I've loved directing so much, but I got sad. And afterwards, Yorma said, well, why, what's up? And I just said, I guess I feel a little sad that that's never actually going to happen for me. You know, I always dreamed of being on Broadway, and I always wanted this one thing from the time I was 8 years old, and somehow it's gone. Like I went a different way, and I guess that's never going to happen. And he was like, don't say never, you don't know. And I said, no, I think I know. I think it's past. And so when this opportunity came up, and Scott,
how did it come up?
Well, Scott, I'm friends with. I mean, it's the worst story to tell a group of actors because I just sound like a douchebag. Like nobody gets offered an incredible role.
All of us understand nepotism and that we've all slept our way to the top and the bottom. All of us have done it. We know the prerequisite.
Yeah. So, I mean, truthfully, Scott and I are director friends, and I had played as on a lark for fun, had played a day player in one of his movies that got cut out. So he had seen me act, and when he had me do that, he went, oh, you're actually an actor. I didn't know that. And I was like, well, yeah, that was what I used to do. But so he's kept it in his head. I'm going to make you do something. I'm going to make you do something. And he cast me in a smaller part in this series that I said yes to. That was going to be about a week's worth of work. And then a month before filming, he called me and said, I lost my actor. Do you want to come and play this much bigger part? And so when that happened, that's when Yorma brought up that play. And he said, remember how sad you got? You said that was never going to happen. You have to say yes to this. I was like, what? I can't say yes to this. We'd have to move to Germany for 3 months. Like I have all these directing projects I'm supposed to be working on. It felt totally inconvenient. But he just reminded me of that, you know, true desire I had deep down. Yeah. And I'm so glad he pushed me.
Isn't this a funny thing that you talk about all these other projects that you had on the go, but if you roll back just a few years, you would have, you know, pulled teeth out to do any of these things. And that seems to me so symptomatic of our profession, that it is feast or famine. You've either got so much going on, or, you know, it's tumbleweed.
Well, you know this because you are in a feast right now.
Yeah.
And I love that you're in a feast after our movie, because I feel like you were seen in this beautiful light and people were able to go, oh my God, look at what he can do. I've always loved him as an actor. And you were like, just, I don't know, I've watched you just blossom in this moment in a way that makes me so happy. And it's true. It's a weird, I mean, that's the really hard thing about being an actor, I think. You're waiting for the phone to ring. You're waiting for somebody to give you a shot. You're waiting for someone to write something really good. Yeah.
I've always thought, out of all the actors that I've ever worked with, there seems to be a common denominator in that you have to have a large ego on the one hand to say, you know, watch me, Dad, watch me, Ma, I want this job. And on the other, terrible lack of self-esteem, which is a contradiction. Because you never feel worthy enough. You always think, well, somebody else is better than me, and they usually are, or they deserve it better than me. But at the same time, you want it. So there's this constant sort of doubt and confidence that goes on. So when I meet actors that are Teflon coated confident, they seem to be like Martians to me. And I've only met 3 of them in my entire career. And you're not one of them.
No, I call it the dark mistress. Acting is like the dark mistress. In some ways, it's a really unhealthy relationship a lot of us have with acting. It's not great for the soul always to have to put yourself in that position, which was part of why I think I walked away from it. It was never because I felt like I didn't love the work. When you actually have the good work, you know, when you have something like this character, or like you as Jack, where you're like, oh, I get to play in this part and I get to put on these incredible hats and do something totally out of the ordinary for me. And, you know, but that doesn't happen all the time. And so, and it's the rest of the lifestyle that is so painful to get those special moments.
So what is your advice about somebody who wants to be an actor, and as you have experienced the frustration of not getting the roles that you felt were right for you, you then went down this path of writing yourself into your own career? Do you think that is as much as you need to do?
I mean, someone gave me the advice a long time ago where they said, if you can do anything else, you should. And I clearly kind of took that advice, because it is a painful life, I think. And I think you have to find a way. You know, you have done the same. You've taken your creative life into your control in terms of making your own projects. I think you have to find a way to create work. You have to find a way, and whether it's by writing or directing or teaming up with people, joining a company, finding a way so that you're not just constantly waiting for somebody to say yes. Because I just think, I think that has a toll. I think there's a toll on your creative reserves where you can't, I don't know. Don't you feel like you have to find a way to generate it yourself at times when
but let's go back to yours is the equivalent of that. You know, it's like the scene from the backstage musical, the classic backstage musical, where the understudy gets to go on because the leading actor has bust their leg or had an accident or whatever. So when the actor who was playing your role that you got to play in your chess epic, when she was no longer available or whatever happened, you then stepped up to the plate with a much...
Can I tell you what you just reminded me of? In my children's theater, which is where I started as an actor, when I was 8, I joined a children's theater called the Alameda Children's Musical Theater. And I did 3 or 4 plays a year from the time I was 8 until I was 14 at this theater.
Yeah.
And they had awards every year. And they gave me the award that was titled the Appearing Tonight in the Role of Award, because I actually became known as the person to call when someone got sick, because I would step in. I once stepped in for Wizard of Oz, played the Scarecrow on 30 minutes notice. I wasn't in the show. And I made up the words and made up the song. I kind of knew the song and dance. And by the second performance, I had it down more. But that was sort of my wheelhouse when I was a child actor in community theater. So it is funny. I hadn't thought about that, but that is kind of what ended up happening here too. It was like, okay, don't mess it up. Come in and and pick up the pieces.
And the actor who played your daughter, I assume you'd never met before, had you?
No, we met early. I mean, we met, similar to you and Melissa, right before filming, but we hit it off right away. She's so real and so sweet. And we both loved our characters and their relationship. We both felt like, oh, isn't it so tender and complicated and heartbreaking the way they are there for each other, but they don't know how to be there for each other. And they're both such solitary women with pain. And we just kind of both had the same excitement about what that relationship, the juiciness of that relationship and how complicated it could be. So that was fun. And then I kind of felt like, I'm sure I'm going to say this in an attempt to not sound as old, I kind of felt like her big sister, more like her mom, but that I felt sort of protective of Anya, and she's so young and so talented and just working all the time. I mean, she's just exploding. And I just wanted to have a ton of heart-to-hearts with her about how to stay true to herself in this business and not lose herself and just what it is to work with good people. You know, Scott Frank, who made this show, is just one of the best people. And I kind of wanted to like tell her like these are the types of people to work with. Surround yourself with these types of good people. And, you know, I wanted to take her under my wing, and she had seen my movies. And so therefore also kind of, I think, wanted that from me. So we developed a kind of nice bond early on where we talked about all things in our lives. And
how did you deal with all the addiction issues?
I don't know. We kind of just played them without worrying too much about them. But I have talked about both you and Melissa in my performance because, you know, I have a real pet peeve with people playing drunk badly. Mm-hmm. And you both did it so masterfully. And so I kept thinking about both of your performances before I did this, where I thought like, how do I do that? How do I like tap into that very realistic, inebriated performance style? And it's particularly impressive from you since you don't drink. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And it feels so real, and it never feels over the top. It's not played for laughs. It's not a joke version of it. I don't know. I'd be curious how you do it. I tried to like come at it from like a physical place where I was like, how do I just make all my joints really loose and feel like everything is like I've lost the kind of fibers that are holding my body up. I've just loosened them all, like unscrewed everything a little bit. That was my image. How do you do it?
Oh, this is not about me. This is, I want to talk about the costumes of your show. I mean, the costumes and the wigs and the whole set design, it was very, very stylized and very, very particular in the way that it was done.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
The designers of the show were incredible. Gabriella Binder, who did the costume design. You know, part of me getting cast so late gave me this real perspective, which I had as a director already, which was realizing how much work goes on before you show up as the actor. You know, everybody else had been working on this character, on my character, for months. They knew her in this way. And I was showing up a few days after talking to Scott and him saying, why don't you come play this part? And had a meeting with Gabrielle where she started to talk to me about the color blue that represented my character and why blue. And she was so tender about her, Alma Wheatley, and she also had loved Can You Ever Forgive Me? So we talked about that, and we kind of cried together early on, but it was so clear she loved and knew this character. And similarly, when I went and saw my house that Uli, the production designer, had built and created, and it was so over the top. I mean, gorgeous and ridiculous, and every pattern of wallpaper. I got to just learn about my character from these amazing designers, you know? Also, Stephen Meisler, the cinematographer, like to see how he had these images that he wanted us to create for Alma. There's this one image that it's very subconscious, you wouldn't notice it, but there was a painting of a woman looking in a mirror. And if you kind of blurred your eyes, you could see she's actually a skull, that her face and the image in the mirror form the two eyes, and the whole mirror itself forms the top of the skull, and there's sort of teeth. And we recreated that image. But knowing that these designers were spending all this time and energy to understand the emotional life of this woman who I was just getting to know, you know, I was just stepping in and saying, okay, who is she? I'm not sure if I totally get her yet, but then I get to pull from all of their work, which was just masterful. And they had been doing it for months, and they had been living with these characters in their heads for months. And that was a really nice, relieving thing to coming back to acting, to recognize how you're held up by everybody's work.
Incredible.
And
literally,
I wouldn't have known that had I not directed 3 movies before this. Had I not, you know, been so on the other side that I saw it from a much wider angle, I think, and then I could feel really comfortable, and I wasn't scared at all, because I just felt like I'm being held by all these artists who know what they're doing a lot more than me, and they get her, and so I can just learn from what they've figured out about her. It was great.
That's so amazing to hear, because I'm sure you've had this experience, as have I, where actors have come in and they've either poo-pooed the costumes, or they have not acknowledged the sets that they're on, or just the incredible privilege of, as you say, the artistry of the people that surround you, and that they give you all this information to help you be the best that you can.
Yeah.
When you see people being late or dismissive or whatever, my teeth nearly fall out of my head in embarrassment that anybody could take anything that we do for granted in any shape or form. So,
I mean, I really think it's every actor in some way should work on a set and be involved in the prep, the months that go in before you show up, because if you had any idea, but there's no way to know. I think back to when I was acting before directing, and you're scared, you're in yourself, you're in your head, you show up on set thinking everybody's there to judge you, and you have to figure out if you're going to do your best job. And really the thing that made me feel just so relaxed was recognizing, oh, I'm a small part in this much bigger cog, this much bigger machine. And I'm here at the very end. They've been working on this for so many months, and I get to come in and look great. And they've all thought through my hair, and they've figured out how to make me into this woman. And, of course you have to complete the job. You have to be up for the challenge and be so present in the moment. And it's a lot of pressure. And I don't mean to diminish that in any way, but you realize how much of a team sport it is. And then that helps you. I think it makes you realize you don't have to be so worried. You're being held.
Yeah. Because the majority of your scenes, from my memory, were with your daughter.
Yeah.
Were there any other actors that you longed to work with, who you knew were in the series? Because I've had that experience where you look at the cast list and you go, my God, I'd love to work with that person. And somebody says, after you finish the movie of this series, they say, how was so-and-so to work with you? You say, we never had any scenes together. I never even met them. No,
Bill Camp was the one for me like that. I mean, he's just so incredible. But we did have one day, we weren't in a scene exactly together, but he's in the background of the school as I drive off, but I got to feel like we had a scene together. We were there on the same day. We were in the makeup trailer. We became friends. We chatted. We figured out we live in the same neighborhood in Brooklyn, and and now we've gotten to do a ton of press together. Yeah. So I feel like I got to know him, but I didn't get to really act with him. That would have been fun. He's so good.
So now that you have been an actor again, are you going to be only acting again, or are you going to juggle between the two? What's happening in your life?
No, I'm ridiculously spoiled. I got to come back to acting and play this deep, complex woman character in a series with a director who I adored and trusted. I mean, that's too good to be true. How do now that my standards are too high, it's I would keep acting if I told Scott, in another 10 years, you can get me to be in another series of yours. But I have all these things that I want to direct, and I don't know. I mean, I would love to act again if it really felt like the right thing. But I also I love directing. I've fallen in love with directing, and it's become.
So how about doing a Barbra Streisand of writing, directing, and acting in the same project? How's that?
Anyone who knows, Barbra Streisand for Richard holds a very special place. So for him even to suggest that I could be like a Barbra Streisand, I mean, the highest compliment. Is this a small version and you have a large version?
This is the small version, and she prefers her left profile to be shown. So now I have the 3 foot full-size sculpture in my yard.
Yes.
But I have this in my study. So, always an inspiration for somebody. So which brings me to ask you, do you think between the Me Too movement, woke, and what has happened in the last 5 years, that are you aware of a real tectonic shift plate, it seems to me, in how things are, especially for women? Because I remember when we were at the Golden Globes and you had got all your actors nominated for these awards, and you had to hustle to get an invitation to get in that room. It was so shame-inducing, and I can't imagine that would happen ever again. True. The
story of that night, when I tell the story of that night, you are the knight in shining armor.
that's not what I'm asking you to say that.
who stepped over the ropes to say, I'm not going into this party if you're not letting my director in. I think, I feel as a female director, which I think is very different from the question as an actor. As a female director, I think there's a big shift that's taken place. My friend Chloe just won an Oscar for Best Director. I think, I hope it lasts. I hope it's not just a moment in time. Mm-hmm. I think it took a lot of pushing, and it took generations of women directors who had been pushing that door open. And I feel immensely grateful. And I feel like I'm standing on the shoulders of all of the women who came before me, who pushed and pushed and pushed. And I got to walk through that door, and I got to make big studio movies, and, make movie after movie. That was not the case for women directors, even if they had a great indie film that came out of Sundance, like I did with Diary of a Teenage Girl 10 years ago. So even my movie came out 6 years ago, my first movie. Even in that period of time, I've seen a shift. And I hope there's more visibility for people of color, for women directors, and that will only make it more possible, more possible, more possible. I think we have a long way to go. I think it really was about, first of all, Hollywood's about money. Nobody's going to make movies that aren't going to make money. And what's been proven over and over again is movies about real people, about people of color, about women, about non-binary people actually make money. And so Hollywood has kind of gone like, oh, okay, I guess I have to pay attention to this. It's all about money. Yeah. But also it's about public opinion. And Hollywood isn't going to change without the sort of nudging from the public. And we've seen an interest in this. The reason I do any story anyone ever asks me to do about women directors or supporting other women directors, or if like Casey Lemons or any friend of mine, Lulu Wong, who's a female director, says, will you come do this interview with me, or will you come do this panel with me? I say yes, because it's so important that we're supporting each other and showing our faces out there so that people can imagine a director who looks like me, instead of just picturing Steven Spielberg in a baseball cap, which is what we've all pictured for our whole lives when you picture a director. So I do think there's been a shift, and I think, it's exciting, and we can't get complacent because there's a lot of work still to be done.
Yeah, but it's a big change.
Yeah, I think so.
Definitely. I'm very aware of it.
Yeah.
It's certainly happened here. And I think Bridgerton, which has been a huge, big success as well, has changed the idea in terms of diversity of what and who and how you can cast a movie. That you're casting people that are best people for the role, irrespective of what gender or what ethnicity they are. And that is, I think it's a big shift for people to take on board, because people talk about it, but the fact that it's actually happened and is happening I think it's incredibly exciting.
No, it's exciting. And I think we talk about the ways that we can help that shift even more. And it can be in small things, like in writing. When you write a script, don't make it that the default race is white. Don't make it that you only list somebody's ethnicity if they're not white. What does that do just in your mind to kind of shift the default away from cis male or white? How do we find the ways that we can continue to kind of change the way we talk and think about these things? And I think all of us are having to kind of look at ourselves, recognize our own biases, figure out ways to shift it bit by bit by bit, and then kind of just push Hollywood in its.
But as you said earlier, it all comes down to money. If you can prove that it makes money, then it doesn't matter what you've got.
But it keeps getting proven. I mean, it just keeps getting proven over and over and over again, from Get Out to Hamilton to, Bridgerton. You're just like, look at all this money, these piles of money coming in. Okay,
so why do you think your chess story, what do you think just made it take fire like it did?
Number one, I think the show, and I can say this because I didn't make it, I just think it's really well done. I think every creative decision that was made with the best intention, with story in mind, with an incredible amount of thought. It is a well-made show. You can't say that about a lot of shows. It's impeccably made. When I saw it actually coming together and saw early cuts, I was so worried about how the chess was going to function. You know, I just thought, how is he going to make chess interesting and emotional? And I just couldn't picture it. I truthfully, I was scared about that part of the show. You know, I thought, and then I saw the first cut and I was like, you did it. You cracked it. You figured out a way to make chess very emotionally invigorating, and you're so with the matches and you care.
You know, it's a competition, and that thing that we all have in us to compete, and the fact that she was, her character and his character was, you know, they assumed because she was so young and because she was a woman, she didn't stand a chance. That immediately sort of galvanized you behind her.
Yeah, so you're on her side.
Just, it's the most fantastic, you know, it's the most basic
scene where all the men, she goes to play the high school chess club and all the men start popping up into frame of like, they're all entering in and it's just her staring, and you just think, God, that scene does something for you as an audience member where you're like, get him, go get him. I'm on your side. It, you know, it doesn't matter.
Scene, even though you're not in it.
That's one of them. That's one of them. That there was something about the way that scene built. You know, she comes into this empty room.
Yeah.
With that chess teacher, and you feel so confused of like, what is happening? What is she a monkey to perform for them, to like play their little chess games, and then they lay then all the men show up, boom, boom, or boys, really, high school boys, just kind of staring at her, and they've all got their 50s haircuts. And then they set out all those boards and she goes around and beats them all one by one. And you galvanize behind her. You feel so on her side. And it was such a smart piece of filmmaking, because you are with her. And it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you as an audience member are a young woman or not. I think you're her in that moment. And that's a fun thing to see, because that's something I've argued all along in my filmmaking career is, you know, anyone can relate to a female protagonist just like anyone can relate to a male protagonist. You can feel like you are that person. And we saw that with this show. People relate to Beth. They feel like they're her. They are on her journey with her. They are on her side. And that's really, really cool. But I don't know. It's lightning in a bottle. Who could have predicted it?
Yeah. The other thing that I'm curious to ask you about is that, you know, if we went from silent movies into talkies, and that was a whole revolution. And then we went from end of the studio system in the 50s into television, and they said it would kill the movies. Well, it didn't. And then video came in the 80s, and that was going to be the end of TV. And then DVDs were going to do it, and then streaming. And each time there's been this, instead of it being diminished in the amount of output, with streaming and Netflix and Amazon and all these big giants that have now taken over the planet, it seems to me that it's created more work and more opportunity and a greater diversity of things that you don't have to fit it into 100 minutes of a movie. You can have this long form in television. So great writing that you always assumed had to be, you know, the Walter Salt screenplays of the 70s, or Robert Town, or those writers, that has really shifted now, that it doesn't seem to be, in my head, any distinction between what is great on television and what is great in a movie. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. And I think you're pointing to something, which is, I think there's a degree in which people try to prove it, right? That, you know, the streamers, everyone feeling like the streamers are going to come in and ruin things or something. Then there are these great creative people who say, like, I'm going to prove them wrong. I'm going to make something so good. I mean, you know, even in the beginning of HBO, of just being like, we are going to redefine television and we are going to make it so much better than you could have ever imagined. And I think there's that kind of push to make things really, really, that are just really good. And, you know, I've talked to a lot of filmmakers who say this, you know, diversity of places where we can make things does make for more women and people of color being able to make things. Then you can make the argument that they are often given lower budgets. And so how do we continue to make things more equitable? But I think there's a positive thing happening with how many places there are to make things. And that it doesn't have to just be a TV show, a half-hour TV show, or a movie. It can be a limited series. It can be the story can actually lead to what's the best format for it. And Queen's Gambit's a perfect example, because they wanted to make it as a movie for like 20 years and
Yeah.
tried multiple times in multiple iterations. And I think it needed to be a limited series. It just makes perfect sense. It fits this timeline in a very, very different way than it would have fit into a 2-hour movie. It just would have been a very different story.
So Marielle, wise person that you are, what do you see for the future in your crystal ball?
Isn't that the question we're all asking coming out of this year?
Yeah.
What's the future? What's the future of our art? What do we want out of our art? What do we want out of each other? I don't know. I mean, I think you and I have a similar reason for liking to tell stories, which is we feel more connected to humanity, to each other. And we felt really separate from each other this year. And we've seen major political divisions. And we've seen, racial change starting to take shape and the pain of that. I don't know. So what does our healing look like? What is our next phase of coming together and looking at our humanity feel like and look like? I think I'm still trying to figure that out.
We have a new president for a start. That surely feels like, for me,
that helps.
Not now, but it does feel like it's slightly kinder.
Yeah, I hope. It's been a hard period of time. It's been really, I think we're in change. We're in the middle of change. We're in the middle, and that's painful. And I don't know. I know everyone still wants movies and shows that are great, though.
What I hear time and time again, and it's come through in everything that you've been talking about, is that whoever is making it, our desire as human beings for a story in which to understand who and what we are, that has not been beaten.
No.
So when I hear somebody pitching something that said, "Oh, this is a COVID drama where nothing happens and it's just down the phone," I literally want to stab myself because we've been through it. I don't want to be reminded of it anymore.
I hope that's not what we're making coming out of this. God, I mean, it's the last thing that any of us want. That's the last thing any of us want to make or watch.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying there's not themes that have come up in this year that we need to address in our art, but I don't want to watch people suffering through a global pandemic on my screen.
So it's like the real estate, location, location, location. In our profession, story, story, story. And on that note, you're a great storyteller, Marielle, and it has been my privilege and enormous pleasure to sit and yak to you.
I love it. I could talk to you all day, Richard. I just love you.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing this.